While September is rice month, sugarcane harvest has begun in earnest in Louisiana.
This week, TWILA's Neil Melancon gives us a preview at how this season is shaping up.
With a roar, the 2018 sugarcane harvest is on. Here on Clayton Hurdle's 1,000 acres of cane in West Baton Rouge Parish, the stalks look good, but there's something ominous on the horizon.
As you can see, we're trying to get this in a hurry because we've got a pretty good rain event happening to the west coming this way, and not what you want the first 2 days of grinding.
Ironically, this rain is coming after a hot, dry summer that slowed the growth on some cane. The effect of these late storms can be seen from the air, where you can see spots of lodging or cane that's laying down, which also makes the harvest difficult.
It just slows everything down, slows the milling process down at the mill. It's not good on anything during harvest.
The longer the harvest goes on, the more problems there will be. Hurdle is showing his guys the difference between the various heights of cane that have been affected by both weather and the ripener they've recently sprayed.
And then it starts stacking the very top of the plant right here. It starts stacking the joints. That's an indication that the plot is working.
While it may be a wet start to the season, and even with the weather problems, the good news is that overall the cane looks healthy. Hurdle says, though, this year's crop has a high standard to overcome.
I'm expecting a probably above average crop, but it always depends on the weather during harvest, how much sugar this crop actually has in it. I think the tonnage is going to be good enough to be a good crop. It's just a matter of whether, we've had a couple of record-breaking sugar per ton or sucrose years the last couple of years. It's hard to follow that up after the last couple of years, but I think we're still going to be at least above average crop.
Of course, we're just at the very start of harvest season, and some farmers haven't even gotten in the field yet as they're waiting for their mills to get going. Harvest season will run as late as early January of next year, and it all depends on the weather. And of course, Kristen, Avery, as you saw, the weather is not getting things off to the most ideal start here. Just a lot of muddy, nasty thing. You could see in the drone video there was some lodge cane in there, and picking all that stuff up, it just takes a lot. Clayton only has about 1,000 acres, so it's not going to be, I think, as long a run there, but it's going to be a lot more difficult for some farmers.
Oh, but his neighbor Bobby Morris has what, 3,500 acres of sugarcane.
He sure does.
They're going to be at it for a while. And you brought up about the wet weather, and we already talked about that wet October we had a couple years back. I still remember that video of Gene Adolph in Assumption Parish. He's there driving through, and the cart next to him, the tractor with the cart, is just pushing this wall of water along.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just, you can't stop.
I hate it for those guys.
And some of them are still planting,
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Some of his neighbors, Clayton was telling me, are still trying to do it, and it's impossible to plant and harvest at the same time.
I was about to say, you've got to have a lot of workforce to be able to do both.
Now, earlier you mentioned soybeans. We're talking about that. Clayton has soybeans out there,
oh, wow.
and he says the damage is around 5%, which is normal for South Louisiana. But some of his neighbors are not quite as lucky, and I'm going to be talking to some folks next week about that. I think we talked about that. But Landon's experience is kind of like what's going on. There's hit or miss. It just depends on how much rain fell and where, and if they have storage. Clayton has some storage, so he's a little bit better off, but not some of the folks that I've heard.
I'd love to say that we're looking forward to your story next week, Neil, but I wish you didn't have to do it. Thank you very much, Neil Melancon.